unending message and dreams of being heavy-headed. Found my truth and searched for exit.
So you're about to enjoy the video about how to plant bulbs. Bulbs are attached to rotations, right? So rotations are a key ingredient to any garden. Like every garden I've ever designed in the last 25 years, I include areas for rotation plantings. Rotations are all about extending blooms and minimizing the amount of maintenance required to get those blooms throughout the year. And how do they strategically get integrated into your core design, right? So I know that sounds like a lot to chew, and it is, but I do have a course, 7 Secrets to a Dream Garden. And in step 6, I go over rotation plantings and show you how to do it, show you how I've been doing it all this time. All right, so that's what the course is all about. It's the same course I'm teaching this fall to college kids in New York. I think they pay about $495, $500. I charge online normally $247. If you want it right now for, like, I guess about 3 more weeks for $147. Sorry, I had to figure out how to do this. You can send that email to brooklyngardenclub@gmail.com. Okay, so that's brooklyngardenclub@gmail.com. Put in the subject line bulbs 2020, BULBS 2020, and I'll show you how to get that for $147. So go ahead and enjoy the video right now. I'll talk to you soon. I guess around October, late October, we'll pull those annuals out and we'll do your tulips, your daffodils, and pansies. The great thing about pansies, like pansies are awesome survivors. In a hard frost, they're gonna come back gangbusters. Snow, you name it. Once that stuff melts and the sun, they get full sun, they're gonna start blooming again. It's very popular to find a combination of pansies and bulbs that work well, complement each other, right? You can do a lot of different things with that, but just remember that they're both going to be blooming like hard at the same time, which is always like really nice to see. So the only thing that pansies don't like is hot summer months, and then they get really scruggly and fugly and long legs, and they don't look nearly as attractive. So let's get started. All right, first thing I'm going to do is I've got my bulb shovel. Now, I use this shovel for everything, but most people consider this a bulb shovel because it is very good for getting bulb pits, among other things. All right, so clear the mulch out. I've picked a couple areas in my rotation spaces. Like these would be the spaces where I would rotate my summer annuals typically as well. Now, when I clear the mulch away, I also need to clear enough area so that I can move my soil temporarily out of place and then bring it right back. Okay, so soil is pretty easy. I'm going to go down 6 inches. The way you measure space is with a shovel, so you don't need a ruler. You can just gauge. This is going to be at least, I'd say, 6 inches right there, right? So you don't want to go too deep. You don't want to go too shallow. Why? Well, if you go too shallow, you stand a good chance of losing your bulbs to squirrels. I'm almost at 6 inches. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen up the soil at the bottom. If you hit clay, or if it's really hard, it's a good idea to add a little bit of sand. That'll help the bulbs root out a tiny bit. I do feel a boulder. So what I want is just a little area on the bottom where I know they're going to be able to root out pretty easily. Okay. About that, and then I like to widen the outside rim a little bit. All right, so I've got a nice bulb pit ready to go. All-purpose fertilizer, not much at all. Okay, so I'm going to throw probably 6 bulbs in here.
Can't sleep without prescription. Can't lie beside a stranger or remedy the distance to the angry masturbator. And the washer swing inside.
Okay, I didn't have a pansy, now I do. So the idea with the pansies, right, as I explained, is to get them to get the bulbs to kind of grow up around them in the spring, right? So in other words, we get color through the end of the fall, like into the winter, even depending on how much snow you get. These things are going to bloom, under very cold conditions. All right, they might wilt a little bit when it's like there's ice and stuff like that, but they're going to pop right back up and start to bloom. And even when it's super cold out, as long as they're in full sun. Okay, so the idea when you're doing bulb pits, you know, this is an option, is that you could put these in to match up with your bulb. So for example, this is purple, right? So if I was doing allium, like purple, you know, those purple big onion bulbs that come out with these purple poof balls, you know what I'm talking about. This would look good perhaps around that, although alliums aren't going to really bloom until early summer, you know. So it's more about thinking like, you know, maybe like with crocus, like so the idea is that those crocus would be, you know, when they start blooming in the early spring, this is going to start blooming too, again, after the snow melts. All right, so if you know, another option would be to like use a yellow, like a yellow pansy, right, and yellow daffodils. So when you're doing this, so for example, you know, I just showed you how to plant daffodils in a bulb pit. I bury those bulbs right at 6 inches, and then when I get like within 3 inches of the surface, I go ahead and I plant this right on top of on top of my pit, and the bulbs will grow up around it. And now I've got a yellow pansy with yellow trumpet bulb, you know, jet fires, whatever I got. So that's just an idea. It's a way to kind of keep your flowers together and get, you know, maximize the amount of bloom that you've got all the time. So it's not, you're not just waiting for those bulbs to start blooming, right? You've got some color right away, even before they start and after, you know. So there you go. If you don't do this, there's other options too. So for example, a lot of people will put muscari, and that's a little purple, blue in there at the top of their bulb, like as a secondary bulb at a more shallow depth, or crocus, as I mentioned. So you put those in at about 3 inches in the same bulb pit, and you've got this really cool display, like the blue muscari. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. Looks really good with the yellow daffodils. You've probably seen that in a linear fashion. So like not necessarily a pit, but like a long trough. It's one way to do it that looks really good. There's many different options. Figure it out. Look at all your options. I'm going to talk more, but I just wanted to give you some ideas right away. I just remembered one other thing that I neglected, and I'm still working on this bulb video here at night. One of the tricks that I like to do when I'm doing daffodils is I look specifically not only for different height and different types of daffodils, but I look at the bloom time. So for example, the jet fires, the tete-a-tetes, those are two mini daffs that come out early, usually, you know, early spring, right? So then I'll go with two other varieties, staggering the bloom time. So look for a mid-spring bloom time and then a late spring bloom time. Now that's just, you can do this with, you know, I'll talk about it in another video, but you can do this with all types of bulbs. You can stagger the bloom times so that you essentially lengthen the amount of time that you have. You're pushing the amount of bloom that you get from the bulbs before you put your annuals. So in a perfect scenario, you've got bulbs blooming from early spring, like early March, all the way to the end of May. You rip those out, and now you can do your annuals safely. Not only that, your annuals will be in full swing. So in other words, you're not going to have that period where they're looking a little tepid. You can go to the nursery and in late May, and the annuals, you know, the calibrachoa, the petunias, all of this stuff is going to be in full bloom, and you know, yeah. You get the idea. All right. That you would do. The only thing that gets a little messy is with daffodils and tulips, because you know, tulips, most people accept the need to just cycle those out. A lot of people don't do that with daffodils, because they have a lower rate of attrition, meaning that they're like 70% of them will live to the next year. So that most people don't want to part with them. In that case, you can tie them back, but and they'll look good and they won't look so messy. But they do take a long time, like a couple of months, to completely die back. You can't rip them out of the ground. If you do that, you might as well just throw them in the compost, because they need to retract the energy back into the bulb before they're going to be good for the following year. So I'm saying all that because if you need to think about that in the fall when you put your bulbs in. What's going to happen when they're finished, right? Are they going to be right in that area? If so, if it's just a small area and you only have 20 bulbs, you know, 20 bulbs or 30 bulbs, something like that. I think they're $20 for a bag of, like, you know, 40 or 50 of them, you know. So that's that.